Well, welcome everybody, Dr. Ron Oberstein at Life West. I am honored today, and welcome to our Life West leadership line. I am honored today. I am president number three to sit in the seat at Life West, but I am so honored to have number one and always be number one in my heart, that's for sure. Dr. Gerry Clum with us today. So Gerry, welcome to the Life West leadership line.
Thanks, Ron. Great to be with you.
Yes, it's great to see you and San Francisco in the background and all that stuff that's happening. It's so cool. And I the truth is, and I think our viewers will know this, that unless they've been in practice for 5 years or more, there's no introduction because everybody should know who Dr. Clum is, right? and it's just how it is,
Well, you're very kind.
And we've got a long history, obviously. We can talk about that another time or maybe today. But I'm I'm tickled pink to have you with us. We've got a lot that we can go through today. And what my thoughts are today was let's kind of do a trip. Let's start from the very beginning and just kind of go through and and see where the future is going to take us, because the insight that you've had has just been incredible in chiropractic. I know there's a special day coming up, correct?
There is.
Tell us about it.
Well, October 12th will be the 50th anniversary of freshman orientation at Palmer. It was October 12th, 1970, and I was 18 years old and away from home for the first time, scared to death.
Yeah.
And it was Columbus Day, Monday. And I went through the orientation process, and I was assigned Post Office Box 1592. And I thought, this is a sign. Columbus Day, I got Box 1592. And I was just thrilled. It was the anchor that I needed to get through the day. And about 3 weeks into the quarter, a fellow that's my roommate, Dick Brogue, who practices in a little town in Ohio called Rabbit Hatch, or Kentucky. And Dick says, that Columbus Day stuff? I said, yeah. He says, that was 1492. And I says, oh God, I'm glad you kept that to yourself.
Your fallback was, I'm 18. Come on. I'm 18. I'm just not
three out of four is okay.
Exactly. Tell us this, because you know what? Obviously, in 1970, you started school when you were 18 years old.
I did, straight out of high school.
Was there prerequisites?
High school.
Just high school.
High
wow.
School. Yeah.
And where we've come, and you've went through all that transition of where we are now, and so you're at Palmer, you're 18 years old, right? You're in beautiful, you left Buffalo, correct? You're in Buffalo?
Yep. Buffalo, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe going to Davenport, I don't know if it was up or down, I can't say, or it was a lateral move. I'm not going to make that judgment because I know Buffalo's it's an up-and-coming city right now. There's a lot of great things happening. I can't speak for the 70s. But you moved to Davenport, as an 18-year-old on your own, going to chiropractic school, and, I don't know if everyone knows what happened, like how you got to Davenport and, Dr. Cassan's and stuff. But why don't you, if you'd share that'd be wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, my history is one of those miracle stories in chiropractic. As a 12-year-old kid, I started to develop some very significant vision problems. And I wound up falling repeatedly. And I had 3 fractures, and the third was a boxer's break on my left hand, index finger. And the orthopedist, as a joking with my dad, said, what's wrong with this kid? We need to get his eyes checked. And they did. And I had a very significant loss of eyesight and vision. And that started my focus on a process of evaluations and diagnoses to find out what was going on. And ultimately, I was diagnosed with bilateral optic atrophy, which, as most folks will know, is a deadening of the nerve head as it enters the back of the eyeball. And it results in a very large visual blind spot, physiological blind spot, or an enlarging blind spot, and a general deterioration of the vision. And it was very often at that time associated with multiple sclerosis as well. So the initial concern was that I had MS and so on. And my folks took me over to we lived in Buffalo, and the big diagnostic center of the area was Cleveland Clinics, and which still is, for that matter. And I was seen at Cleveland Clinics, and they did a procedure called a pneumoencephalogram. And you got to picture this. You're anesthetized, you're in a chair, they do a lumbar puncture, they drain the cerebrospinal fluid, they replace the cerebrospinal fluid with air. So now where there was fluid, there's now air, and now there's a contrast between the water density and the air density in the brain, and they can get some images. This is pre-CT, pre-MRI.
Yeah.
And they try and take the air out, try and put the fluid back in, and you wake up a day later convinced your brain is being sucked through the floor of your skull. And it was a brutal, brutal test. And they concluded that I had optic atrophy. And the prognosis was progressive deterioration, ultimate blindness, and my folks were advised they better get me into Braille school. Well, this was July 4th weekend, 1964. We were in Cleveland, and we came back to Buffalo, and my father had for years seen a chiropractor in a little town on Lake Erie on the Canadian side called Port Colborne. And I happened to go with him, and he had missed several appointments, and the chiropractor, Dr. Kassan, asked my dad, so where you been? And my dad filled him in a little bit, and we happened to be the last patients of the day, and he said, well, tell me some more about it. And we sat down, and I'll never forget it. I can close my eyes, and I am 12 years old. I'm sitting in those Naugahyde 6 waiting room chairs on the 2nd story over Pagetto's Meat Market in Port Colborne. Dr. Kassan's in one chair, my dad's in another, and they're talking about what the findings were in Cleveland. And my dad had a 10th grade education, very smart man, but he wasn't well educated. And he was intimidated by people that were. And he talked to Dr. Kassan about what he was told. And I remember him sitting there, Dr. Kassan sitting there with a Grays, a Guyton's, and a Boyd's, trying to explain to my dad what bilateral optic atrophy of idiopathic origin with ultimate prognosis of blindness really meant. Mm-hmm. And as a 12-year-old kid, one of the greatest things I ever got out of chiropractic was sitting there watching the fear and the suffering and the agony drain out of my dad's face when Dr. Kassan explained to him what was going on, and he got it. Mm. And at the end of that conversation, Cameron looked at my dad and said, Don, I don't know if I can help the boy. Guarantee I wouldn't hurt him, and I'd love the chance to try. And I got my first adjustment that night. That night, my vision was 2200 correctable to about 2100. And 2 months later, when we went back home to Buffalo after the summer, went back to the ophthalmologist, and literally basement office, little home office in Kenmore, New York. I'm in the ophthalmology chair. This guy's got this big old mustache, smoking Camel cigarettes, no filters. I got those old glasses on that weighed about 40 pounds on your face that they put the lenses into. And I'm sitting there, I got that thing, and he looked at a cigarette in one hand, a ophthalmoscope in the other. He's looking at it. My dad's behind him, and he's talking. He said, didn't miss a beat, didn't miss a puff. He says, this is a goddamn miracle. And my dad didn't say anything. He said, well, what'd you do to this boy? He said, we took him to a chiropractor. Exact quote, I wouldn't take my dog to a chiropractor. That was it. And all I knew is the people you sent me to damn near killed me with that pneumoencephalogram. And this guy that my dad took me to that you wouldn't take your dog to was one of the nicest people other than my father I'd ever met on the planet. And, you know, what the hell is going on? And literally 12 years old, sitting in the ophthalmologist chair, that day I decided to be a chiropractor.
Oh man, that's beautiful.
And my vision was that day was correctable down to about 20/60.
Wow. And
so I went on. I eventually you'll get a kick out of this. I was in high school. because of the vision problems, my parents had gotten me into vocational rehab with the state of New York. And I went to see my counselor in downtown Buffalo, and I was excited to tell him about my eyesight had changed and I was doing better. And he said, listen, kid, he said, this says prognosis is ultimate blindness and continued deterioration. He said, you want to go to school? He says, yeah. He says, where do you want to go to school? I said, Palmer College in Davenport, Iowa. He says, fine, we'll take care of that. He said, that other stuff about you getting better, he says, keep that to yourself. He said, a lot of paperwork. I don't want to go there.
Exactly. But you know what's amazing is that, because now when you hear miracle stories in chiropractic, what they call miracle stories, most the lay, it's like, get out of here, man. My eyesight was saved.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's like so many of this has happened. I mean, for the eons of time, right? And somehow we got pigeonholed along the way, right? Into, back pain, whatever it might be, and a lot of people felt it was when Medicare and all other kind of stuff. But really what I want to touch on is Dr. Kassan.
Yeah.
Because here's a man who basically told the truth to your father and said, I don't know if I can help him. I sure as heck won't hurt him. And I'd love to have the chance. And Dr. Kassan was deeply rooted in chiropractic, right? So he guided your path, right? And so share with that, because at Palmer, then you found Dr. Williams along the way, right?
Well, no, Cameron was involved in there too. I came back to Cam and I literally, I mean, he was just the nicest man you'd ever want to meet. And if you were to say, I want you to go into a meditation and go to the safest spot you've ever been in your life, it would be laying supine on a high-low table in his office with my head and neck in his hands. Yeah. I mean, it was just that good, and he had these hands that were just these massive pillow-like things that you just sunk into, and it was just, God, it was great, and just the feel. I'm just overcome by it right now thinking about it. Yeah. But I told Cameron I wanted to be a chiropractor, and he was very encouraging. And over the summers, this started when I was 12 years old. So every summer we'd go back to Canada, and throughout the summer I'd see much more of him during the summer because we was very close and it was easy to get to. And it was a cross-border trip when we weren't living in Canada, so it was a bit of a hassle to get there. So we'd see him a lot. And then when I was 16, he invited me to go with him and his family to a Life DE meeting in Atlanta at the old airport Hilton. And it was the very early days of DE. This would have been
1968, right?
1968, yeah. It started in 64. Yeah. And so I went, and my brother lived in Georgia at the time. He was in working for the Food and Drug Administration and worked in Atlanta and lived outside, forgot what town he lived in. So I was able to stay with him and then go to the meetings during the day with Cam and Audrey and met Sid, and I sat there and I was stupefied, mystified, and mesmerized all at the same time. And I could barely understand Sid's accent. I'm a kid out of Western New York, and this, drawling Southerner, I don't know what the hell he said, but I liked it.
Not to mention the words that he might have made up.
Yeah, there were a few perspicacities and things like that in there. But anyway, I that was my orientation. And toward the end of the meeting, Sid was going around the room, and it was a smaller group, maybe 100 people, and he was talking to each one and trying to touch base with each one as Sid would do. And he came to me and he kind of basically said, "Who are you?" And I explained that Dr. Kassan brought me, and I was thinking about being a chiropractor. And right there in the meeting, he said, "You go back home, do what you need to do, get to Palmer. When you get to Palmer, give me a call, and we'll go from there." And I said, "Yes, sir." And that's what I did. So I went back home, finished up high school, and did what I needed to do, and enrolled at Palmer. And shortly thereafter, wrote him a letter and said, I'm here. I'm doing what you said to do.
Yep.
And that's went from there. And then during the time that I was in school, I took 1 quarter off halfway through school, but 12 of 13 quarters, we made it down to the DE meeting from Davenport every quarter, and became very involved and helped coordinate that. And I got on the wrong side of the Palmer administration at one point, because we took 13 busloads of students from Davenport down to one DE meeting. And Palmer was a ghost town, and Atlanta was hopping that weekend. I mean to tell you.
So what people don't know is right out of school, what did you do? Were you in Davenport? Did you head to Atlanta?
Yeah, no, I graduated in December of 1973. I opened practice in a small practice in January of 1974. You didn't go to Palmer, but for the Palmer folks, I was in Gil Schmiedel's office, and Dr. Schmiedel taught neurology, and he was the faculty terror of the time, and he was a great chiropractor, and but I had a space in his office, and I taught at Palmer at the time through 1974, and then in the fall of 74 or summer of 74, Sid announced that Life Chiropractic College was being formed. And I was at the meeting, and I approached Sid and said, I'm on the faculty at Davenport, and I'm getting married in the fall, but if you need me, I'd be happy to be involved. And one thing led to another, and Kathy and I got married on November 2nd. I resigned from Palmer on December 15th. We packed up everything we had, and we headed to Atlanta, and January 6th, we were in Atlanta, and I was one of the 3 faculty at Life Chiropractic College in January 1975, and it all went from there.
Yeah, and I mean, and if people know the history, you did. I don't think there was a job you didn't.
No, well, we all did. I mean,
yeah,
whatever needed to be done when it needed to be done, whether you like it or not.
Yeah. And Gerry, I'll never forget my first introduction to you. I was transferring. You remember this? I was transferring from a college in the West Coast, and I had to have an interview. And if you remember, it was in February. There was a snowstorm that weekend, and I wasn't sure if the college was even open. How many times there was one plow, I think, in the whole city, and
Marietta.
I think it belonged to the hockey team, along with the Zamboni, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. And I made it over, and I walked in, and I just remember saying, Dr. Clum, and I heard someone say, in here, and I went in, I looked in the room, I didn't see you. And you saw me, and you said, down here, and I looked down, and you were on the ground. Remember this? You were cleaning a bookcase. Mm-hmm. And I said, hi, I'm Ron Oberstein. I'm here for the interview. And you threw me a rag and said, come on down. And I just literally was cleaning bookcases with you as we were talking. You remember what was going on? Remember who was coming to town?
Yeah, 60 Minutes, Mike Wallace.
Yep. And Sid had the whole school just on total, cleanup, right?
Oh, it was spit and polish those days. Yeah.
It was great, but it was incredible. Then you became my instructor, my special schedule coordinator, all that stuff. And then the day you left to go to Life West, and boom, and then that journey as that took off, which everyone knows the amazing things you did at Life West and the amazing things you've done for chiropractic since then, right? I don't think there's one committee in chiropractic that you haven't been on or been the chair or president of, and everything else. And I do want to let our audience know that we did a retirement party, right? Remember the retirement party we did, which was about what, 10 years ago now?
10 years ago in January, yeah.
In January. And it was done at the Rotunda building in Oakland.
Yeah. And
I have just got to tell our audience, and I was really honored, Gerry. I was able to MC that. And there was, I think if that room would have imploded, we would have lost everybody in chiropractic. Anybody who had a name in chiropractic would have lost, right? If we had everyone on, from the ACA to the ICA to the CCE to the FSU to all these groups and every president of every college, and I mean, it was one of the most who's who of dignitaries in chiropractic that I've ever seen. I mean, to this day, you know, it was absolutely incredible. And, you know, the people came up and just shared their feelings and shared about you. And, you know, you're the statesman, you know, right now of chiropractic, and it's beautiful. And, you know, and talking about that, you know, where we are now, let's jump into research. Cause I know, you know, you've been doing work with the research, you know, you've been kind of, you know, doing the executive directing of the Rubicon and different things. And, you know, you've been deeply involved, I should say, of promoting, you know, Heidi Havoc's research, you know, that's going on in New Zealand. And then I know you're in Berlin, you know, doing things, you know, at the WFC Research Council. But what do you see happening in research, and what have been some of the memories that you've had?
Well, you know, if we look over the history of the profession, you know, for many, many years, we had a very awkward relationship with research. And we really had a very significant misunderstanding of how it's done and what it's for. And we wanted to validate chiropractic. And that's all we wanted out of research. And it doesn't work that way. And so we've had to come to an understanding of how research does work. And I have traveled, you know, light years from where I was in my understanding to today. And that being said, I'm not a researcher. I'm a good reader. I'm a good simulator. And I think I'm a pretty good teacher. So I can take those pieces and put them together and sometimes come up with some useful information out of it. But, you know, the reality is research in this day and age is the coin of the realm. And, you know, if we don't have it, we're going to be left in the dust, without a doubt. So, as you said in the beginning, when we were talking about my circumstances being with an eyesight problem, being a miracle case, and you know, generally what we hear about today is musculoskeletal stuff and low back and neck pain and headache kind of stuff. And you know, the reality is it was low-hanging fruit. You know, it was a significant cost center. It was a significant problem in healthcare. You know, and anybody who's ever suffered with low back pain knows it's nothing to laugh at, and it's nothing to take lightly, and it's a tremendous complication in people's lives and quality of life. Doesn't often kill people, but it does, you know, complicate things. And so, but we've had this relationship, and when we started to move in that direction, and we started to get some wind in our sails, you know, I think we abandoned the fundamentals of those things that got us to the point where anybody paid any attention to us at all, and we took advantage of that low-hanging fruit. Medicare came into play, and we had some, you know, regulatory things to deal with, and it started down that path. Insurance came into play, and you know, low back pain, neck pain, headache was easy to chart for, easier to record for, easier to report, and easier to collect on. And, you know, the profession wound up going in that way. And we lost that focus on the neuromusculoskeletal component, and we got eaten up by the musculoskeletal component. And then once we had proven the value of spinal care and spinal adjusting by our language, spinal manipulation and other people's language, but once we had proven the value of spinal adjusting relative to musculoskeletal problems, well, then it was, well, of course, and everybody and their brother decided they need to get involved in that. You know, if you think back when 50 years ago, in 1970, nobody wanted to adjust the spine. No, the osteopaths couldn't get away from it fast enough. And, you know, we were the only ones that paid any attention to it. Then finally, once we've proven the value through time and persistence, you know, everybody and their brother, the physical therapists want to do it, the osteopaths have a resurgence in it. We've got athletic trainers that want to do it, the naturopaths want to do it. You know, everybody, and the problem with that is they all think it's a simple, easy, no-brainer thing to do. And there's an implied insult in it that, well, if the chiropractors can do it, we surely can do it. And, you know, I compare it to my racquetball skills. I am not an athlete. I don't have an athletic bone in my body, never had, never will have. But I played racquetball for a while when I was in the early days of life. And it was a gentleman's game to me. I hit the ball off the wall, it bounces behind the line, I step out of the way, the other guy hits the ball. You know, it was kind of like croquet with a airborne, you know. And then I got in that box one day with a guy who sent the ball that far off the ground, that far behind the line, at like 80 miles an hour. And there wasn't a corner deep enough I could get into so I wouldn't get killed, you know. That's racquetball. You know, most people, when they look at spinal adjusting, they think of spinal adjusting the way I play racquetball. The way we think of spinal adjusting is that far off the ground, that far behind the line at 80 miles an hour. And brother, you better pay attention.
Yeah.
You know, and when you bring that kind of skill, that kind of expertise, and that kind of commitment to it, it gives up its secrets to you. You know, and you see things, you learn things, you understand things that the casual, you know, once a week I do this thing, never has a clue of.
Yeah, it's like the weekend seminar. You know, go do a weekend seminar and learn how to manipulate the body, right? And you know, that kind of thing, right? You know, it's like there's no specificity. There's no, I mean, truthfully, yeah, I agree with you. You know, I mean, we all
There's no respect for it either.
No respect. Yeah, learning how to do brain surgery on a weekend, you know, it's kind of thing. And yeah, I hear you. And it's so interesting because, you know, you see where we are now, right? People respect the adjustment. They want to come get the adjustment. Medical doctors are sending people to chiropractors. I mean, come on, let's go even back when I was in school, when you were teaching me, you know, back in the late 70s, early 80s, you know, I mean, a medical doctor to send someone to a chiropractor was like blasphemy, you know, no way, you know, no way. It's changing, you know, obviously, you know, and things are changing drastically. And I think our precision of what we're doing, the artistry of what we're doing has grown tremendously also.
That's right.
But BJ had the artistry. And
Absolutely.
When you were there, and I think you're right. It just got lost. And probably, I don't know, Gerry, you would know better than I. Did it just kind of move into that, whatever that model, the low-hanging fruit, back pain kind of stuff, and flying sevens and things like that, where we just kind of, you know, we got lost in our own way, you know, on our growth.
Yeah. You know, one of the paradoxes of chiropractic is that the care works so well, even applied at a minimal competency level, it produces remarkable results.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's plenty of room to be lazy and comfortable and successful in the same period, which is very dangerous.
Very.
You know, and so, you know, when you look around and you think of the great adjusters, you know, that you're up against it, you need an adjustment, and, you know, it's life or death, you know, the list of people that I would turn to is a real short list.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same for most chiropractors.
Absolutely.
And it shouldn't be that way.
It shouldn't.
And so to get back to what we were talking about in terms of the research, I think one of the next frontiers of research, you know, is we've gotten the neurophysiology well down the road. You know, it'll take a while for the rest of our colleagues that don't want to look at that data set and don't want to look at that information, and they're comfortable in the musculoskeletal box or the musculoskeletal container. It's going to take them a while to come to that, but that's a matter of time, and there's nothing you can do to move people along. You can push them, you can pull them, you can cuss at them, you can kick them, but they're going to come along at their own time. They'll come along just as they did when they saw the value of a chiropractic care for spinal problems. Other people will come along, and it'll get more refined and sophisticated. But what we need to make sure that we keep our attention on is the quality of the adjustment that we deliver, and the demand of the student. You know, one of the great complaints I had against CCE, and I'm not bashing CCE when I say this because I've said it in the meetings to CCE in public many times. Over all the site visits for all the campuses, I was at Palmer, I was at Life, I was at Life West, went through dozens of site visits and all of them combined. Never once was there a single comment about the adjusting skills, adjusting classes, the adjusting curriculum, the technique curriculum. Now, if you had one frayed cord on one PT machine in the clinic stuck away in a storage room, my God, the heavens were going to come undone over that problem. But nobody ever paid attention to what it is that we do at its core. Mm-hmm. Never. And what you don't review, what you don't check, what you don't measure, you don't improve and you don't value.
That's right.
If I were to ask you right now how much money you got in your pocket, I think you could probably tell me within a few bucks how much is in your wallet right at the moment. What we measure, we value.
Right.
And when we don't measure our skill, when we don't measure our instructional capacity and so on, we don't value it. And when we don't value it, then it dissipates out and it becomes meaningless.
Yeah.
And I see the greatest challenge for chiropractic education is to restore the dignity, restore the respect, restore the meaning, and as a result, magnify the power of the adjustment in that exchange with the patient.
Yeah. And Gerry, I want our viewers to know this because I think it's really important, and I inherited this chair, right? And before me was Brian Kelly, did a phenomenal job, but before was you. And you set the groundwork. And Life West has always been known for their adjusting, for the amount of classes that we have. In fact, we are right now 200 hours over the CCE requirements, right? For what that is. Not even CCE, state of California, right? State of California, not CCE, right. State of California. And we looked at it. Where are we over? What's going on here? And how can we lessen the burden on our students? We have so much technique. And it's hard to take that away. We don't want to take that away.
Such problems we should have.
Exactly, because this is what it's about. But this is what you brought about, right? And that's a credit to you because after what you just said, right, about how important it is to honor, to respect, to learn, to dive in, to become the best that we can be, right, and to be exposed as students, right? Because that's the greatest thing you can do for students is to expose them because the mastery continues, right? When you get out. Yeah. It's just incredible, and you are so right. And obviously, and on a vitalistic side, we truly understand the power and the value of a specific chiropractic adjustment. There's nothing better.
Nothing like it.
Nothing like it. I had a group of students yesterday. You'll like this. They interviewed me on Zoom. A group of students are going to DE in October, and so they asked me to come on just to share. They wanted to interview me about it, right? Because they knew that I grew up in DE, right? Just like you grew up in DE, and so they interviewed me on it, and I told them a story about, and you'll relate to this. Lined up 200-300 doctors down the hallway, waiting to go into one room to walk into the bathroom, to get on their hands and knees, put their head whatever side their Atlas listing was, right? To have one person adjust them. You know who I'm talking about, right?
Absolutely.
Michael Kale, to have a specific upper cervical adjustment, right? Just like that. When you value it and you understand it and and then the miracles are there anyways. And I think I just want to touch on one other thing because where you talked about that, because chiropractic works so well, it works so great when we, when we have specific adjustments. But the other side of that, along with that, is, our philosophy, right? The principles. Yep. The body is a self-healing, self-regulating organism. So we are so far ahead of all these other people, the medics and everybody else in our game, because we already know that we got a body that works. We look at it so differently, and we know that the body wants to restore itself into a normalitative state, right? All we have to do is, remove the interference, and it gets lost, like you said. The simple things, Gerry, I don't know. They just kind of get lost along the way, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's no doubt about that, because some people look at the concept when you say that the body's a self-healing organism, that somehow is a cop out of responsibility, or a cop out of need for knowledge or information or whatever, and that you can just rely on that. You don't need to be skilled or knowledgeable and so on, which is asinine.
Yeah.
I'm working on a letter to a young person who's starting chiropractic school in the fall, and I'm trying to talk to them about, understanding what you had just said, the recognition that the body is a self-healing organism, and it has that inherent capacity, but then we have to understand its limits. We have to understand our ability to support that, and our ability to interpret that. It's a tremendous responsibility, and it's a tremendous challenge if you taken well. I think about all those great adjusters that we talked about, from Gonstead to Thompson to you name it. There wasn't a subject you could talk about that Clay Thompson wasn't lucid on. From microbiology to histology.
Brilliant, man.
I mean, it was fascinating to be around, and then, you hear people think, well, all I need to know is how to adjust. Well, I suppose for some people that's true in some cases, but to be the person you need to be to serve the patient and the profession, you need to apply yourself on so many different levels. And it's that. And then the importance of where that was going is that the philosophical perspectives gives us the framework with it to hang those bits of information and interpret that information. Sid used to talk about the guy from Brooklyn and the guy from Moscow that got into business, and one was a communistic system and one was a capitalistic system. Business was business. But the processes that they got to those businesses were radically different, and the outcomes were radically different. But they still might have a pair of shoes was the commodity in the exchange, and the same thing. Our respect for the body's ability to heal changes the ballgame.
That's right.
I mean, no disrespect to the average physician, but I don't think he or she thinks of the body respectfully when they take out that prescription pad. They think of the body in a very deficient fashion that's disrespectful to the healing.
And when we have the word that kept coming to me when you were saying that was reverence.
That's right.
And when we learn this and have that reverence, why would you want to go and just do this, manipulate, or just blind, when you've got this perfect person in front of you, right? Respect the reverence for that.
Yeah. And I, that example I gave, the prescription in question may absolutely be needed to save somebody's life. I don't know that. I'm not saying that there's no room for it.
Right.
But I'm saying it's the thought that goes behind it and how that changes everything. And it's that reverence is the right word, and thank you for adding that. And I think that if you add that to it and you understand that then creates a humility in the practitioner that I think allows what Sid talked about in that dynamic essential to come out. What is there that causes that person to stand alone among their peers, unique, not in smarts, not in skill, not in anything else, but they're unique in their ability to serve and to give and to get results.
Yeah.
And for me, that's what it was about. And it was that amalgam of understanding what you're doing, why you're doing it, and then getting as much information with which to do it, and then doing it in a humble, serving, reflective fashion. That to me is the formula for causing your life to be something more than a person with a vocation, and causes your vocation to be an avocation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you talk about that, and Sid called it the dynamic essential. BJ might have called it that's something. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It's just when you said it so beautifully, Gerry. When you get it, you can never lose that. You can never lose that.
Once you've known it,
yeah,
you spend your whole life either to protect it or gain it back.
That's right.
And, it's just, one of the things that the greatest joys I had sitting in the chair that you're in right now, every once in a while, maybe a half a dozen times over 30 years, I'd walk the hall or something, and a young person had come out of the clinic, and they had just given an adjustment that changed the patient's life, changed their life. They knew it on a level that they could not express, and they were looking for somebody to tell it to and somebody to talk to about it. And I was the guy in the hallway. Yeah. And I can remember half a dozen of them, taking them into my office, sitting them down. They must have felt captive because I didn't want to let them go until they had talked that so through and understood. And I mean, they understood their role in life differently after that moment of that adjustment than they did before. And they were different. And to have the privilege of being the first person to share that thought with after they've had that experience was one of the greatest joys I ever had as president.
What an honor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Gerry, and it leads us to this, and I don't want to end this conversation, but because we can go on and on and on, and I, we're hitting about 45 minutes. We normally do about.
Oh Lord.
I'm good. I am so good, because if anybody turn this off, they don't know what they've missed, right? So, hopefully they'll turn it back on at some point. But if you are still with us, you just got a dose of what I was so honored to have as a teacher, as a mentor. You just got Clumanized, that we'll say. When you look at this and you talk about it, and we'll kind of wrap it now, but when you talk about it, and that reverence and everything else, it's like, why? We've always said this. Who wouldn't want to be a chiropractor if you want to be in the healing arts, or who wouldn't want to have chiropractic care, right? When you really understand it on that human side, that deep side that's there, right? And all of our greats in our profession, when you look at Gonstead, you look at Thompson, you look at, you can name them, and just, BJ, right? Sid, they all had that.
That's right.
They all had that,
Yeah.
And it's not available to the few. It's available to everybody. It's whether we look for that and whether we want to move towards that. And that's the most beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Gerry, I love you. And
thank you, my friend. Man, good to be with you.
I want to keep going. It's like this.
Yeah.
And just thank you. And, from the bottom of my heart, I'll be able to thank you for the next 30 years, but thank you for the bottom of my heart. All that you've given to this profession and what, I know you've gotten back, immensely, but all that you've given, and the thousands and thousands and thousands of chiropractors that graduated from Life West, under your leadership, that are now out doing things that are just amazing in the world, and the work you've done in our profession, the work you've done, on so many different levels that people have no idea, the ad hoc meetings that you've sat in for ages and ages, and hotel food that you've ate at our, for us, everything you've done. I mean, when they say a scholar and a gentleman, you truly exemplify that. And I know, I'm coming from my heart when I say that. So
you're very kind.
We love and appreciate you so much. Any last things that you want to share with our viewers? Drop one more pearl. Come on, one more.
I think the purse is empty. It's, I've had a charmed career. The opportunities that came before me, I can't imagine you can't imagine how fortunate I feel to have been at the spot that I was when I was, and to have those opportunities come to me. And you said I've been involved in this and that and lots of organizations and lots of meetings. And I think of all that I've gotten from chiropractic, and I could do this 10 times over, and I still wouldn't pay back what I've received from the profession, from the care, and from the mindset of being a chiropractor, and how it shaped my life, my family's life. And I will be so eternally grateful for it all. And most importantly, for the people, many of whom we've talked about today, Cameron, Sid, along the way, who just have meant so much. And I'm very grateful.
Yeah. And we are very grateful that your father had the wisdom to take you to Dr. Kassan's, to have that adjustment, to change the course of your life, which changed the course of ours. So
no question.
Very thankful.
You did good, Dad.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Well, to our viewers, I don't even know how to end this. Gerry, thank you. And I've said
thank you, buddy.
Today. To our viewers, thank you for listening in. If you sat, and I know you're here with us now, you just really just had something that it touched my heart. I'm sure it touched your heart, but it connected something within. And just remember that every day you have an opportunity to share the chiropractic story. Every day you have the opportunity to touch people if that's in your realm. Just never forget, what Gerry had said about that amalgamation of the knowledge of the body, the wisdom that's within the body, and putting that into practice and being able to understand that as we deliver the adjustment. There's nothing greater than that I can imagine in the healing worlds in chiropractic, and Dr. Clum just shared that with us. So thank you for tuning into our Life West Leadership Line. We'll be coming at you again for our next leadership line. Until then, make sure you're hugging people, you're loving people, you're giving, doing, loving, and serving, and coming from that place of abundance. And until our next time we get to cross paths, I hope to see you soon.